Carolle with us. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having us.
So we have 4 releases this week. Sky Purrington also has a release, so I'll make sure I put the link to that in the comments, and we'll talk about that a little bit about the end, just mostly so I can gush about how gorgeous the cover is, because it is lovely, lovely, lovely. But I thought we could start first this week with Anna St. Clair, and you've got a Lyons Den book that released.
I do. And one thing I want to...
of our own. Like, that's a great title.
I liked it. I've had to come up with it before I came up with a story, of course. So I was hoping I could find a story to go with it. But yeah, and the one thing I want to say about my Lyons Den books is that I'm creating a world. I might be the only one like this, but I'm creating a world within the world. Mm-hmm. So all of my books, all of them connect. You know, whether they're the Rakes of Mayhem series, or the Lyons Den books, but you have to get into them to kind of see the character repeats, but they do come in to play. And like the Heart of the Lion, which was the last book I wrote I guess it released in January or something. Mm-hmm. The character from this one came directly from that book. So
great.
Yeah, so that they're very connected. And this book, you may tell about the book. Okay. This book has a gentleman coming back from the Napoleonic Wars, and he's coming back because his father and his brother died while he was out over there. And he didn't make it back in time for his brother's funeral. He was very close to his brother, and so he's kind of got a little, I won't say a chip on his shoulder, but he's grieving a lot. Mm-hmm. And when he comes back, what greets him is tremendous debt. And the debt was so unexpected because his father was one of these people who made smart investments. His brother was no stupid person, but his father apparently had a mistress, and the mistress, well, yes, she and that's the thing that really bothered me, because the father was so in love with the mother, but the father was going through that late stage, maybe some memory problems at that time. But anyway, this woman latched onto him and ended up with pockets of money. She kind of raided cash she could get from him. And then she had a townhouse that was a London townhouse, which paraded right in the middle of London, of course, and was a huge thing to his mother, that a huge embarrassment. So he is determined to win back his fortune, his family's fortune. So he realizes that, he's not a drinker. He's not one of these people who likes to gamble, but he has a gift for it. So he goes after gambling, and he says that's the quickest way to do it. Drags his friend in with them all the time, and to watch and make sure he doesn't succumb to any of Mrs. Dove Lyons' shenanigans. And so he stays alert. But while he's in there and he's winning big all the time, he notices this young man who is kind of weird. He's kind of got this red hair. He's got oversized sideburns. He's got these mutton chops, and he's very young looking, but he's got a huge mustache, and he's winning. And he wins. It's like people just step out of the way, because the guy just comes in and he only stays there for like an hour or so, and then he leaves. So, and of course, who that is the heroine, Priscilla. Priscilla despairs that she will never be able to find a husband. Now, Alexander, the hero, doesn't want to marry. He doesn't plan to marry, has not, so he's avoiding it. That's not
going to work for him, I don't think.
It's not going to work for him, especially with Priscilla. Priscilla is, they share a talent, obviously the gambling piece of it. But Priscilla doesn't like the girly stuff. She doesn't like the ton expectations that she, act like a mindless person. And so her father taught her to play cards, and she's realized that she has a talent for playing cards. What her mother does is her mother dresses her up like a peacock. Think Bridgerton's, the little peacock colors. Well, she gets dressed up similar to that in oranges and colors that just don't go with a redhead. So it's just, she looks like like a flaming peacock, he just doesn't look good. So she knows it. And then her mother makes her do musicals. She and her sister have to do these musicals in front of the ton. So they are laughed at and scorned. And she, nobody wants, yes. And so, coupled with the dress and everything like that, doesn't work for her. And so she has it in her head that she's going to gain enough money that she can get away. She's almost at, the age she can go and not have to answer to her parents and live on her own. But she knows that if she does that, her father may refuse to support her. So she wants to be able to support herself. So she's smart. And she goes to Mrs. Dove Lyons because Mrs. Dove Lyons' husband was a tremendous friend, is a friend of the family, has been for a long time. So she gives her allowances, that and realizes it, that she would normally not give other people, but she wants this girl to have a life, and she knows the mother, and she knows the child is not getting a life. So that's kind of the premise of the story.
She's a fairy godmother.
Kind of. I know that I've taken liberties with Mrs. Dove Lyons, but I find that Mrs. Dove Lyons has a softer side. It's just that people don't always see that. So this is part of her softer side. She does gain money. She doesn't lose money in this transaction. She does find a way to do what she does best, which is matchmaking. So that all comes about. But other than that, I shouldn't tell any more about the story.
Oh, well, it sounds like a lot of fun. And I love that you have enough Lyons Den books now that they can. Is this the fourth one?
This is the third one.
Third one. So Lion's Prey was the first one.
So I'll do another one. But but they all kind of, Lion's Prey led into the Rakes of Mayhem, and then the Christmas anthology, or that kind of stuff, all played on characters that were out of that. And so they're all kind of hooked into the same world.
Do you have a story in the Night of Lions collection next month? Okay.
I wanted to. I truly did, but I could not work it out. I couldn't. It was just the timing.
We will definitely do it again, but we are having a Lions Den Night of Lions party next month. And the Lions Den guide just came out last week too.
I saw that. I read it. I loved it.
Yeah, which has kind of connections on how everything fits together and stuff. So if you're a Lions Den reader, those would be good things to bookmark.
Mm-hmm.
So. Awesome. So. Well, that sounds like so much fun, and I love the mutton chops inside her.
Oh yeah, she has the mud chops, and everything I write always has an adorable animal in it, and this one does too. So
what kind?
When?
What kind? What is it?
A dog. It's a dog. And one thing about my animals is that I use animals that I know. So they are animals from my childhood, or my mother's animals, or my animal. Yeah. So all of these animals, cats, dogs, except for the parrot that's in one of my other books. I didn't have a parrot, but and I didn't have a donkey. I've written about a donkey. Other than that, the dogs and cats are fair game.
Not the donkey or the parrot, but everybody else.
But I had fun with the donkey.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a great story and a good addition to the Lions Den collection.
I think people will enjoy it if they kind of take it like it is. It's a work of fiction, and it is. And I do see the ruthlessness to Mrs. Dove Lyons, and I put some of that in there, but mostly I put down in this story her softer side, because she does have, when she cares about somebody, there is that.
So we get a layered character. Those are always good. So our next release this week is Chastity's book, and it is the 8th book in the Hellions Club series. I love the setup for this series. This is great. And it's A Dangerous Passion. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So everyone who's read the Hellion Club series knows who the Hound of Whitehall is. He's my sort of shadowy underworld kingpin figure. That nothing shady happens in the city that he doesn't have a bead on. That's just, and usually a percentage in. So, but there is a widow. Her name is Honoria Blaylock, and she is what most men of the period dreaded beyond anything, and that is a reformer. So she's working in the rookeries and in the poorer areas of the city, helping women who are prostitutes, helping them to find other employment, helping them to get out of the poverty and the squalor that were so pervasive at the time. And obviously, in the course of that, she will encounter dangerous situations for herself. And it just so happens that when one of these situations occurs, he's there. And sort of in a departure of his normal behavior, he actually rescues her. And then they develop this strange kind of love, hate, but occasionally rely on one another for help relationship that spans like a year and a half until sorry, I'm on the patio because it's the only private place at the beach house. So a year and a half in, her sister is abducted, and her sister's husband, who is quite literally the worst human being ever, just refuses to pay the ransom because he basically wants her killed. He's being abducted is kind of like, well, now I don't have to do it myself kind of thing.
Oh, man.
So Honoria goes to the Hound of Whitehall for help, and he agrees to help her, but only if she will go to bed with him until he decides he doesn't want her there anymore. And she agrees because that actually falls in line with what she wants. She gets to have what she wants, but she doesn't have to admit that she wanted it. So that works for her.
This is quite a naughty setup you have going here.
It is. It's a little different. But it's a lot of fun. And I liked him having to confront the softer parts of himself because he's very much focused on the fact that he's a bad guy. He's always been a bad guy. He's never aspired to be anything but a bad guy. He's just not totally a bad guy, and he's not really comfortable with that.
It's like a Regency mafia thing.
It kind of is. It is. He's an interesting character, and this was a lot of fun to write. It wound up being a really long book. Most of my books are like 70 to 72,000 words. This came in, I want to say, around 85,000. So it's a very long book for me, but the plot was pretty complicated, so it sort of demanded it.
Well, there's kidnappings and stuff.
There's kidnappings. There's lots of things. There's multiple villains. There's all kinds of craziness happening. But anybody who's read my books knows that that's not uncommon.
I love your books.
I have to kill at least one person in every book. That's the rule.
I know another author you need to get together with. She has to kill somebody all the time too. I'm always going, why are you there's such a death path after your books.
Well, hey, some things just need doing, you know?
That's what she says.
You have to have contrast between the good and the bad.
That sounds great, and I love the idea that he's not entirely a bad guy and not entirely comfortable with the idea that he's not entirely a bad guy. That's really fun.
That's
that sounds like a lot of fun. So the final release this week is Hope Carolle's book, and this is the third book in the Ladies of the Labyrinth series, and it's the Season of the Veil. And I love the time travel parts of these, and that they're going to different times and stuff.
I think I bought one. I haven't read it yet.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this series. The first one I had written 8 years ago, and then I connected with Dragonblade, and she said, I'm sorry, we don't do standalone books. We need 2 more books. So I kind of had to quickly come up with ideas for the second and third books. And so the first book was the Veil Between Worlds, which takes place during medieval times, which is kind of the area where I had studied my master's degree in, was Middle English literature. And then I was kind of on vacation, and I thought, all right, well, we'll meet Leonardo da Vinci, and then we'll meet Shakespeare. And then I didn't realize how incredibly, what a huge area of research I had to do to even think about portraying William Shakespeare. And I kind of took a feminist lens to it. I'm so sorry. I'm getting.
It's okay. It's such a lovely.
I thought it was
tone.
me. I'm thinking,
No, it's me.
it means applause.
Like, you wouldn't have had to tell us, and we would have thought it was fairies or something, because it's just
yes, it's just cute things coming in. Anyway, so I have William Shakespeare, and is our big historical figure that we meet in this book, and the last of the Ladies of the Labyrinth series. And our main character is Maeve, who is a middle school drama teacher.
fun.
And I wanted somebody completely opposite from who I am to portray. So she is petite, she is blonde, she is a runner, she has boundless energy, she's a morning person, I'm a night person. And she just, she never stops moving. So she runs, and she's helping her sister out at the bakery at first thing in the morning. And she came from a working class background. So she's the first person in her family to go to university. And she is one night performing at her regional theater company when her friend Gabby, who is from book 2, The Veil of Time, comes to visit her and has a proposition for not only her, but her director, Mick, who she's had a crush on for a few years now. So Mick
she's taking the hero back with her.
Yes. So
I like time travel.
Thank you. I love it. I love it. So much fun. So Mick is kind of like, almost like a Mick Jagger type. He's just endlessly sexy, like Michael Hutchins, but with kind of bleach blonde surfer hair, and he wears vintage clothing like Kurt Cobain. And so he's just got kind of these cool rocker vibes, but he's also a Shakespearean actor and director. So they both have the knowledge, having acted in Shakespeare all these years, to go back in time and try to live in that world. So they're recruited, the Ladies of the Labyrinth from the last 2 books, train them up, and they're ready to go back. And the kind of clincher for Maeve is that she needs to help her family out. And then there's some sort of, hopefully some financial gains to be made if they can bring back a piece of paper from Shakespeare, because Shakespeare actually had very few documents that showed that he was the author of all of those plays. So they were never actually any originals that were signed by him or anything like that. The only thing we have from Shakespeare is his legal documents, like his last will and testament, where he gave his wife his second best bed. Which is always one of my favorite details. So there's very little about him existing in what remains in history. And so there has always been talk that Shakespeare wasn't really Shakespeare. Shakespeare was an actor who signed these few legal documents, but a guy from the countryside who wasn't sophisticated, who only went to grammar school, could not have possibly produced all those in war and court life, things like that. So the Ladies of the Labyrinth think that Mary Sidney Herbert, who is the Countess of Pembroke, might actually have something to do with Shakespeare's success. Either she's written all of the books or the plays. Yeah. And so they go to seek the truth, and they try to sniff out where Shakespeare is. They go up to London in the theater district that existed back then. And it was kind of a turning point for English history, because There was bear baiting going on at the time. So it was kind of a rough area, and they were trying to hopefully elevate the entertainment that was going on in the period. So so there's Maeve and Mick, and then they meet this other director from the time called Rupert. And Rupert, unlike Mick, is kind of a sophisticated man of the times who can ease Maeve's path into the world, which she finds to be quite dangerous. So as a kind of feminist sticking up for people and places that she might not have been welcome in. So including the acting world, which women at the time weren't allowed to act. So I had a lot of fun writing it.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a really layered plot with lots of interesting, complex characters. So
I just had Buffy Spike flashbacks when you were describing. He's full on Spike, and I'm here for that.
Spike, yeah, definitely Spike.
That sound like it.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like so much fun. Well, ladies, we have just a couple minutes left. So I thought we could do my new favorite thing is to ask everybody what was their first, like, what was your first romance novel love? What's your first story? What's your first author? What's the one that caught you and made you stay? And I do this mostly so that I can expand my TBR pile.
Oh. Are you going down like the Brady Bunch, or are you going across?
You should go first, because I know you have the book in your hot little hands, and so we have visual aids. So I feel like you should go first.
I love
look at that,
Catherine Wildwas.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
I was on my honeymoon and I read this book. I mean, the world stopped until I finished this book, and I was all night. Love
That's
it.
a honeymoon.
Oh, it does. I'm frozen. I don't know. I'm frozen here.
No, you're not.
I read those.
Oh, I'm frozen to me. So I'm glad it's not one of those with my tongue sticking out or something.
No, moving around just fine.
No, I read the Kathleen Woodward books. I started reading romance probably when I was entirely too young to be reading romance. I want to say I was like 12, maybe. And in the beginning, I was limited to whatever Zebra paperback was on the sales rack at the grocery store, because that was the only place in my hometown where you could buy books, was the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered that our library had this wonderful rotation of paperback books.
They didn't the big carousels.
Yeah, they didn't even record which titles you took out. They would just, if you took out 25 paperback books, you had to bring back 25 paperback books. It didn't matter what they were. So that way they always kept fresh titles in. And the first book that I read that really just changed the way I felt about historical romance, when I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I love, was Jude Devereux's Highland Velvet. That is like, the Montgomery brothers were the dream, always the dream.
What about you, Hope?
That's a good question. I remember distinctly going to this summer house that my parents had rented for a week up in Maine, and they had a collection of Barbara Cartland novels. And the old dame of historical romance. And so I read my first one, in an hour and a half, and I was captivated. And then I read my second one, and then I started noticing a pattern that the heroines couldn't speak in complete sentences without a lot of ellipses. And that bothered me. So I was like, I need, women who can actually say finish a thought, not be scared of voicing her opinions. And so, from then on, I was out, looking for stronger female leads. But I also have to give credit to C.S. Lewis and the Narnia Chronicles for leading me into kind of that time travel, even though his isn't necessarily time travel, it's stepping into another world, but that whole Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, just going back and discovering a whole new world. So for me, it's a labyrinth. But I just loved Prince Caspian. So yeah, Barbara Cartland was my gateway, and then I went off on my adventures. And just shout out to the librarians out there. Just,
Oh, yes.
when you get to go as a kid and you've kind of tapped out the children's library, and then you're 12 and you get to go into the big adult section, it's such a thrill. Such a huge
They're
thrill.
like guides, because you can go to them and you can say, I like, and they'll say, well, what do you like? And you tell them what you like, and they know like 18 other things that you're going to like. And
Yeah.
it's like having a secret guide helping you. It's
Absolutely.
wonderful. And we had those same kind of carousels that Chastity's library had, where it was, we still do at the library down the street from me, where the paperbacks they put on a thing, and you just take them, they're stamped with the library's thing on the edge, and you don't have to check them out. You just take them and bring them back.
That's so great.
It was amazing. I would tote huge bags of like 25 or 30 paperbacks home with me every time I went. And of course, I was 12, so I walked. And this was in Appalachia. So if you could imagine carting that bag of 25 paperback books up a hill, I would probably die of asthma attacks if I tried to do that today.
But all I wanted to do was read. Like we're talking about the quantity of books. Like as a girl, all I wanted to just let me alone.
Yes.
Just like all I wanted to do was sit and read.
Yes.
I always read, but it was my mother-in-law who read these historical romances. She would have boxes of them, and I have most of hers. I haven't had the heart to throw them out, so I've got some very old, bodice ripping, you name it, and I have them books. But we would read them all.
Yeah,
I think if any of you were like me, I did not really fit with people in my hometown. I had a totally different mindset. I had different interests. I spoke in a different way. And it was like books were where I went to find people who were like me. Because that was where I fit. I didn't fit in the real world setting, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and it was so much bigger. Like I remember reading Scandal the first time, and it was like, oh, this is not a small town. Like this is a much bigger, much more cosmopolitan world than, and we had traveled a fair bit. So it's not that I hadn't seen things, but it was just that idea of immersing yourself into a story that you can stay in and imagine yourself in. And that's just, it's such an incredibly powerful thing. So.
Huge. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we didn't get to talk about where Chastity is. We're just going to have to sit here and have envy in our hearts, or I'll have enough envy for all of us, because
I'm very envious.
Wind blowing through her hair.
I know she's got that
It's
look, going on.
It's fantastic. I recommend Gulf Coast beaches if you get a chance.
I've
They're
never been. I want
they're
to.
heaven.
Well, that's something to look forward to, but it looks like you're having a lovely time. And if you are heading to a beach somewhere, or to the mountains, or to anywhere, and you need to fill your backpack up with books, we have got you covered, because we have 4 fantastic books this week. You want to grab your books on release period or pre-order period, because that's when they're the very best deal. If you don't get them then, you can read in Kindle Unlimited. And the day that this airs is the day that the Hot Earl Summer. Let me tell you, the marketing department had so much fun with it.
Oh, wow.
Summer, I love it.
With the Hot Earl Summer promo starts the day that this recording airs. So if you haven't already signed up for the raffle counter to win your beach tote with a thing to hold your frosty beverage and all your books and your sunglasses and your beach blanket and all of those things, you need to do that right now. And you need to head to the Dragonblade page. There'll be links all over our social media stuff where you can find either the page on the Dragonblade website or the page on our Amazon store that has all of the books that are either free or on sale for 5 days. to over the weekend. So you want to make sure you grab all the hot earls you can.
Sounds like a good plan.
Like, who doesn't like a hot earl summer? I mean,
Really?
I know what I'm reading on the beach tomorrow.
ladies, it was delightful to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us this week. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll make sure I pop the links to all the books in the comments. So if you haven't gotten yours already, you can grab them now.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We'll see you back here same time next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.